Hi, I'm Ralph Mitchell. I'm with the UF-IFAS Extension, Charlotte County, and today we're going to talk about pruning trees and shrubs. And one of the first things we're going to look at, of course, are tools. And this pruning saw is something I use often, probably my #1 tool. It's curved, it's very sharp, it has a lot of good uses for smaller branches. And of course, some hand clippers here, again, for fine type work. There's other tools as well, but make sure also you have a good pair of gloves. One of the first things we want to look at are the structure of the tree. And as you can see here, we want to have it so we have one central leader and at least 4 or 5 good scaffold branches that are arrayed around, almost in a whorl around the trunk. All right, what we're looking for again is one central leader and at least 4 or 5 good scaffold branches or side branches. We're also looking for branches with good attachment that have a greater than 45-degree angle, and some of these may have to be removed as the plant grows, but this is a young plant and it looks good for now. And one of the other things we want to look at is the attachment strength. When we see branches, are they branches that are well attached to the trunk? Generally ones that have a angle, or crotch angle as they call it, of 45 degrees or less do not have a good strength or attachment. We're looking for ones that have more of a U-shape or more than 45-degree angle, crotch angle. And you can see some of the problems in trees. One indicator is what they call bark inclusion. That's when you have 2 what they call codominant stems or competing leaders that will never attach well, and it's something we want to try to correct while they're young. We also want to take a look here at the difference between a strongly attached branch to trees and some that are weaker and more often to fail. We can see with this illustration. All right, what we've got here is a tree with a lot of what they call codominant stems and also bark inclusion, where these are all growing together and pressed together. You can see the sort of V-shaped crotch angle there. It's an indication that this has poor structure. Again, this is caused by too many leaders being stuck in here, or codominant stems. You get the included bark where there's no attachment. So this is a problem area we're probably going to have to try to work on. All right, this is a really good or bad example, should I say, of included bark and codominant stems. There's multiple leaders here that have tried to become the leader. It wasn't back in time properly pruned and trained, and this is the result. We have multiple leaders, there's no connective tissue, there's a lot of included bark, and a good windstorm could actually pull this apart. Now, for proper branch removal, it used to be common for people to do what they call a flush cut right up against the trunk, and they found with study and research that that was not a good idea. There is a zone called the branch collar, which is a swelling where the branch and the trunk meet, and you want to make a cut just outside that branch collar. It's a visible swollen area, a bit of an angle, and that will be an ideal cut. And matter of fact, it is going to what they call seal itself up. Trees never heal, they seal up and put layers of wood down. So after that first cut, if you did it properly, just outside the branch collar region, about a year later you'll see what they call callus tissue developing. And it almost looks like a donut of smooth bark beginning to fill in that hole. Another year or so later, it will be completely covered with new bark tissue, and it will eventually just fade away and flatten out, and it will almost be like it was never there. Now, with looking at, of course, how to remove branches, some branches are going to be smallish. We can take care of those pretty easily. But branches that are 1 inch or over, we're going to do what they call a 3-part cut. The first cut is going to be about 1 foot out from the branch collar, and we're going to make an undercut, about 1/3 of the way in. Then we're going to go on top of that, about 1 inch out, make an overcut, about 1/3 of the way in. The weight of the branch will break at the pivot point. You'll get rid of all that heavy branch, and then you can go back to that stub and do your final cut just outside the branch collar. We also do not recommend pruning seal for trees. It's been found that it will actually lock in organisms and trap in decay and cause additional problems. So no pruning seal. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate the 3-part cut in that this branch is well over an inch in diameter, and if I were just to cut it, or I'm supposed to just outside the branch collar, it's likely that the weight of the branch would then rip a piece of bark off. So what I'm going to do is go out about a foot and make an undercut, about a third of the way in or so. And then I'm going to make an overcut about an inch out over the top here. And if everything works well, there we go. It will break at the pivot point. We removed all this heavy weight, which would have caused a big rip. And then we're going to go back and finish the cut just outside the branch collar. And we're done. All right, we do not recommend the use of pruning spray. It's an asphalt type material. They found that it actually locks in decay organisms and makes the problem worse. So this is something we would not recommend. If you do the pruning cut right, there'll be no need for this anyways. And again, it's a problem. We don't recommend it. Another thing, so there's a saying that if you need to go up a ladder with a chainsaw, you need a Florida certified arborist. Pruning can become a dangerous task, and for large trees and other difficult things, we recommend Florida certified arborists. They can be found at the Florida International Society of Arboriculture. The next thing we want to talk about is pruning shrubs. And one of the first things we want to do is to make sure that we make a cut properly as far as where the bud is. Now, we'll take some practice, but generally we want a bit of an angle, about a 1/4 inch or so above an outward pointing bud. We don't want the stub above that bud too long or too short, but you can see from the illustration just how to do that. We also, too, want to look at pruning shrubs. The first thing we want to look at is thinning. And thinning is just removing a whole branch back to its attachment. What it does is it opens up the body of the shrub a bit, takes out some of the older wood, allows good air circulation, and improves the general appearance and health of the shrub. The other thing we can do too is what they call a heading cut, and that pretty much is just cutting back to an outward pointing bud or branch, and it helps it get a little bit bushier and fills out a little bit more. All right, we're just going to take this beautyberry and we're going to thin part of it out, just to open up the shrub a bit, and we're just going to take it out right at the base. And again, that's going to open it up a little bit, and it's going to allow better air circulation and growth. All right, we've got a very old oleander shrub here. I'm just going to demonstrate about heading back, and it's simply, again, cutting back to an outward pointing bud or branch, removing that. That will cause that to get bushier over time, and it will be a much better looking plant. Keep in mind too, oleander, all plant parts are toxic, so be careful about handling them. Make sure you have gloves. One of the takeaways with pruning shrubs, especially in a hedge type setting, is that for formal hedges, we want to make sure that the top of that is narrow and the base is wide. It's almost a trapezoid shape. A lot of people do that upside down, and if you do it the wrong way with a broad top and narrow bottom, you're going to have very leggy, open, not very solid looking hedge. All right, what we've got here are some fairly newly planted shrubs that are going to be turned into a formal hedge. As they grow in, our goal is to have a narrow top and a wide base. In this manner, you get sun to all parts equally. It's much fuller, it doesn't look so leggy, and it becomes a very attractive hedge. It will take some time, and again, it's more or less going to be in a trapezoid shape, but it should look very nice once it fills in. final thing we want to look at is pruning palms. And bottom line is take off only brown old fronds if possible. You can take off flower heads and fruits anytime, doesn't matter. But we don't want is the hurricane cut. Hurricane cut does not make the palm any more hurricane resistant. As a matter of fact, it shows in research that it may become more prone to damage in windstorms. So we're just taking off the brown fronds. If you had to take a few green fronds off, try to look at it at the 3 and 9 o'clock plane on a clock face. You can take fronds off below that horizontal level, but nothing above it. We don't want to overstress the palm. And again, hurricane cuts are not a good practice, and they will stress and cause damage to the palm. With palms, we want to make sure to try to maintain as many of the green fronds as possible. So it's fine to take brown fronds off anytime. We'll just do it right here. And you can remove flower heads or seed heads anytime as well. But try to maintain all the green fronds because they're making food for the plant. I just want to leave you with a few resources. Our publication website, which is EDIS, E as in Ed, D as in dog, I as in ice, has these, and one of them is developing a preventative pruning program for young trees. One is developing a preventive pruning program in your community for mature trees, and one simply on pruning palms. And pretty much what I've talked about is illustrated and contained in these publications. So check out EDIS, and you can take a look at those for yourself. Thank you.